quite have enough processing power even when it was overclocked. So having bought a Raspberry Pi 5 and not made a single video about it, I thought we'd have a look at what we could do with it for amateur radio. The idea being to free up my main PC so that while I'm working digital modes, I can get on with other things on my PC. So the first thing that we need to do is to create an image for the Pi. And I've just downloaded the latest Pi imager. Which is coming up on the wrong monitor, which is 1.8.3. And I'm going to choose the Raspberry Pi 5 and the filter so that we only get the Raspberry Pi 5 operating systems. To get the best out of it, I want the 64-bit OS because why not? So this is Debian Bookworm with the Pi desktop. That's what I want, and it also comes with recommended software. I've got the 8GB one. You could probably do it equally well with a 4GB one or the other versions when they come out. I'm going to choose the storage, which obviously my USB device. I've got a 64GB card, it doesn't need to be that big, but at the price they are these days, why not? So click Next, and these days it's an added convenience to be able to set up your SSID and password, change the username from the default of Raspberry, change the password, set a host name. Let's call this something else. We'll call it Radio Pi 5 for reasons that will be apparent. And I've set my locale settings. I notice a lot of people don't set these, but it feels right. You can also set other things should you require to do so. So you can set up services such as SSH, and options as well. So I'll save those, we'll apply them, otherwise it won't work, and then we'll erase the previous configuration that I did for testing. So this will take a couple of minutes.
A few moments later.
Okay, so we've got the Raspberry Pi operating system installed, and I'll show you how I enabled it. In here, you get this warning, and on the Pi 5 you seem to get it every time. There's a way of fixing that, which I'll show you shortly. But you can't see this, which has now come up. So this is the VNC viewer, and the way that I set up VNC viewer, VNC server, real VNC server. The way I set up real VNC server is to go to interfaces, and I've set on SSH and VNC. So we can get the basics done. This is the resolution for VNC mode only. So it's important to set that. We've done changed the hostname and password, and that's all okay. So we need to reboot that, which will cause it to disconnect.
A few moments later.
This wrong monitor thing's a pain, but it occurs because I'm using OBS Studio in the other one. So the first thing I do, and it's a personal choice, is to move the taskbar to the bottom. But that's just me. You can put it where you like. I just like it like that. The next thing we're going to do is do the updates. While that's happening, I'm going to go somewhere else. Okay, so we've done our updates, and the next thing I want to do is to overclock the Pi. So sudo nano /boot /config txt. If you want information about overclocking the Pi, I just basically googled it. There's a couple of places you can go. One is Tom's Hardware, and they recommend 3 GHz. I personally don't, but I'll try that later. And the other one was LeePSP Video. So I went to LeePSP Video and I got these settings. So we'll copy those. It doesn't matter where you put them, I'll put them at the bottom. And Control X, Y, yes, and then reboot. I picked 2.6 GHz because when I tried 3 it didn't reboot afterwards, and I couldn't be bothered trying all the interim ones. So I picked 2.4 GHz for now. You can always try it faster. And give that a few seconds to reboot when I hear the fan slow down again. B, you can play with the overclock settings to your heart's content. So while that's rebooting, a couple of other things that we need. One is a CAT connection to your radio. Now the Xiegu has a USB dongle. Other radios, it'll vary. So there's my USB dongle. And the other thing that you need, because the Pi doesn't give out 3.5mm audio, and if it did it wouldn't have a mic input anyway, is get a USB dongle that does, make sure it has both connections. Some of them are only mic and some are only speakers. So this will do mic and speakers into USB. So we'll plug that in as well. There we go. Pi's rebooted. And we're back. Okie dokie. So now if you want, you can add a couple of things to the taskbar. CPU temp, CPU speed. So there we go. I have got mine in a case. I can't show you because it's all plugged in. I'm using the standard Pi case and fan. So 54 degrees, that's centigrade, hopefully. And that, I'm not sure what this is. That's not the same plugin I normally use. Oh well. So now we can start installing some software. So I'll just get rid of my other keyboard. Because when you first boot you need a keyboard plugged into the Pi. Because I'm using real VNC, I no longer do. So let's full screen that and start installing some software. Now the joy is that these days all the software that we wish to install is included in the Pi repositories. So the first one I want is FLrig. Now depending on your radio you may not need FLrig. I do. So we'll take that. Then for other digital modes I want FLdigi. I shall also spell it properly. FLdigi. I also want WSJT-X. No, that one, that's GSA call. I don't want the Golang binding. So you've got the option of JTDX and WSJT-X. You can pick and choose. If you're familiar with one of these over another, by all means pick a different one. And the other one that I tried before was an SSD TV program, QSSTV. That's interesting. What does that feature? Okay, maybe that's a useful package to have. I think I installed that previously as well. So we've got most of the packages that we want to install. I can't think of any others off the top of my head. So we'll apply those and we'll let it install them. Now, if you have problems with real VNC, you can change the desktop manager. I found it initially worked on Wayland, which is the default, but I subsequently had issues where I couldn't resize windows on WSJT-X. So I switched it back to X11 org, and that was fine. That allowed me to move the windows around. I also found some other things out to do with the settings, which I'll show you on here. Okay, so they're all installed. If I come out of here and go back in again, it's just going straight back in at the moment. But you may find that you need to change the settings, and what I did, I changed this to pass the media, can't remember what I changed now. Oh, I unticked these. I found if I had that ticked, it would tell me that the key had changed every time. So, we've got our software installed. All we have to do now is configure it. So I would start with FLrig. Make sure your radio is plugged in. So my radio is a Xiegu G1N. So why am I selecting a G90? There's no setting for a G1N, but the G90 one works fine. I've got it connected via the USB port, not that one, that's a serial USB port. So all the way down here, USB 0. Don't need these two enabled. I want that on 1. This only applies if you've got a Xiegu. You will need to do the research if you haven't got a Xiegu. And with a bit of luck, we'll hear a click and get the extra controls. So that seems to be okay. Push to talk, cat on. Sure that's the right one? No, it's not. I don't want it on the serial port. I want it on USB 0. Pretty certain that's the one I want. So we'll close that. Now, depending on your radio, you can change another setting, which is the user interface. And although a lot of the features don't exist on my radio, I like the wide one. So you have to restart it after doing that. Have to close that one as well. So we go to ham radio, FLrig. There we go. So that's happy. Push to talk isn't. Oh yes it is. There we go. So the red bar indicates it's transmitting, and I can see I'm putting out 7 watts or whatever. Put it into CW mode just to get a carrier. Okay. Doesn't seem bad. Oh, why did I close that? I may need to play with the push to talk settings. That's the first bit. In fact, I'm not using that. If I was working single sideband, that's worth having. So we can now decide which of these to do. I tend to do WSJT-X first. Okay, so we've got the problem that we can't move it around the screen, which is annoying. So we'll close that and see if we can set it up correctly. So we'll go sudo raspi-config config. I thought we said Raspi. Obviously it's Raspi. Display options. No, not that one. Advanced. Wayland. Oh, we're on X11. Or are we? That's a good question. Just check that. Okay, so we've now switched to X11. I wish it would show what it's set to by default, that would help. Give that a second or two. Okay, so WSJT-X. So we'll just set up the configuration for this. So enter your call sign, not mine, please. Although the more calls you log for me, the better. I like to have that and that's put on. It's up to you. I just like it to show the new periods and blank lines displaying miles and TX messages to the receive frequency window. That's my personal choice. You can set it up how you like. The watchdog timer I tend to set to 3 minutes. Again, personal choice. Radio, you can possibly set your radio up. I need to use FLrig, which is fine. Select that as cart, and that should work. So I can't click OK yet because it'll moan. So I need to set the audio up, and mine comes up as C Media Electronics. And that's the fallback one, I don't want that. So that's my dongle. And here we go, it doesn't fit on the screen. So you have to slide it up to the top. There we go. Just about picked it up. Reporting, prompt me to log it please, because I won't otherwise. You can try different settings of these, but I just basically select those. And that even though it's deprecated. So that's the setup, pretty much the setup. You can add different frequencies in here if you wish to do so. You can change the colour scheme if you want to. I don't bother. I'm perfectly happy with it as is. And that's just for JT65. So I should be able to click OK, and it moans. It moans because I didn't set FLrig working first. Why did that not do anything? Usually that turns green. Oh, there we go. I heard the ATU kick in, so I know it's working. Usually that comes up green after a few seconds. But it is working, I promise you. Because it comes up with an error if it isn't. So then we just need to set our frequency. Make sure the volume's turned up, and that should work. But I'm not receiving any audio. There we go, you can see it's receiving signals. So what we can do, we can drag this out to 2.5 kilohertz. And what I did was I went to configuration. On the default one I renamed to FT8. Now I've got it working, I'll clone it. So now we've got a clone, and I'll rename the clone to FT4. I'm doing this as an example. So if we now change the configuration to FT4 and switch to, I did make sure it was an FT8 originally. We can now drag this up here, pull this out to 2.5 kilohertz again. Make sure we're on the right frequency. We're on the wrong mode. So we want FT4. and then we want to be on the right frequency for FT4. So ignore that bit at the top, so erase that. And there we go. And I repeat that for every mode I wish to do. So the next one I want to do is FLdigi. And this has a wizard. So it's pretty straightforward. Put some details in about your case if you like. There we go. Don't need to do that. Next. Pretty certain that port audio is the one. So by default it will go to FLrig. That's the FLrig. That's fine. Don't need to do that. We do need to select FLrig. We do need to select USB. And that should be fine. The baud rate is 19200 for my radio. Yours will be different. Don't use them in the UK. I'm sure that some of them are of interest to some people. There's that FLrig. Do we get any audio? Now this is a little bit less sensitive to the audio. Oh, there we go. So basically turn the audio up until it starts flashing red, and then just back it off. So that's in the green. There's some signals. So we're in BSPK31, which is good. I don't find a lot of activity on digital modes in the UK. That's a different story altogether. But that's got the basic setup on that. That's fine. Do I wish to quit? Yes. And then the last one, I'm not sure what FLwrap is. We can set up GS8 call. So people who complain that FT8 doesn't have rag tree mode on, GS8 call does. We'll leave that off for now. Distance in miles. No, that seems all good. Now heartbeat is optional. You can put it on or off. I'm going to do some experimenting with it on. But again, that's personal choice. So my rig's FLrig, cat control, test cats, yep, that worked. The frequency changed up there, and I can see it's changed on the radio. That's working. Relay clicked. Audio, it's picked the settings up, I'm leaving it alone. This is for something I might be doing in the future, so we'll set those. Frequencies, they're all preset anyway. Notifications, heartbeat message received, CQ message received, acknowledged message received, inbox message received. That should be okay. And user interface, yeah, it looks okay. Those are all things you can play with. So there we go, that's got it basically set up. We have some audio going. We can do a basic CQ. I don't necessarily know if that's on the right frequency. Oh, there we go. Yeah, my volume's too high. So there we go, we've got the basics set up. I haven't done JT-X, but it's basically the same as WSJT-X. One day I'll get them the right way around. So the fiddly windows. Same sort of things. I will allow that. That's my choice. So again, it'd be nice if it went down to FLrig when I did that. Cat control. Yep. There you go. Turn screen on this one. Picked up the settings again, that's good. Probably because it's the only sound card on here. And you can set it by right clicking and setting it as the default there. I'm not using, this does seem to disable one of the video outs, but that's fine, I just connected it into the other one. Sequencing, yeah, we can have, they're okay. Reporting. Notice that some of the windows don't quite fit on the Wayland desktop. It is better on X11, but it's decided to transmit for some reason. That's quite interesting. No, it hasn't. No, something strange has happened. Okay. For some reason the PTT was on. It wasn't transmitting anything because we're not modulating it. So there we go. Can we move the windows around? No, we can't. So it appears to be a Wayland issue. But there we go. We have got some form of control going on. We're in FT8. So we can actually do some work. Let's enable TX. And let's go a little bit into a clearer part of the band. And we'll do a TX. Oh, there we go. Oh, I like that interface. I've not used this much, only, just a very quick fiddle around with it. I need to do TX next, don't I? There we go. Just double checking the settings because I'm not as familiar with this. So we're in FT8, we're on 20 meters. Will it transmit? It didn't want to. Oh, probably helps if you turn it on. It's all interesting stuff. So it's personal preference as to what programs you use. I just wanted to show you an introduction to it if you fancy dabbling with these modes. These are some of the most popular modes. FT8, FT4, JS9, WSPR, all those are popular modes that are worth looking at. There's a few other ones as well, I can't remember the names off the top of my head, but if you play with JTDX or WSJT-X, those are the most popular modes. If you get some success with those, you might want to move on to JS8 call or FLdigi, BSPK31. You can do digital Morse without knowing any Morse code, but I've had no success with that so far, so take that with a pinch of salt. So thanks for watching, best 73s, catch you down there.